The millionaire's son lay still on the marble floor, eyes shut, body cold with shock, while the maid knelt beside him, trembling, holding something small, dark, and moving. "Grace, what did you do?" The butler gasped, frozen by fear. Footsteps thundered through the mansion. Mr. Caleb Thompson, the man whose money could buy almost anything, burst into the room, his face pale with horror. "What happened to my son?" he shouted, rushing forward. Grace's lips quivered. Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't hurt him, sir," she whispered. "I swear I was only trying to help." "Help?" Caleb barked, his voice echoing through the wide hall. "You touched my son? Without my permission?" Grace slowly opened her palm. Inside was something no one had ever seen before. Something strange, dark and wet that shimmered under the light. Everyone in the room stepped back, their faces pale. The air grew heavy, silent, until a soft sound broke through it. "Dad!" came a voice. The same boy who had been born deaf. The same boy who had never spoken a single word in his life. No one moved, not even Caleb, and in that moment he realized the maid had just done the impossible. Dear viewers, this is a story about love, faith, and the kind of miracle that money could never buy. Stay with me till the end, because what happens next will touch your heart and remind you that sometimes the most powerful healing comes from the people we least expect. The Thompson mansion was a palace of perfection. Every chandelier sparkled, every floor gleamed, yet the air inside felt hollow. Mr. Caleb Thompson, a billionaire known for precision, power, and control, lived in a house filled with silence because his only son, Ethan, had been born deaf. No treatment worked, no doctor, no technology, no miracle cure. For 10 long years, Ethan had never heard the rain, never spoken a word. And every night, Caleb lay awake, haunted by the silence money couldn't fix. The mansion staff treated Ethan like a shadow, pitied him, avoided him, except one person, Grace, a young maid with gentle eyes and a quiet strength. She came from nothing. Her mother sick, her life built on struggle, but beneath her calm face lived a heart full of memories and pain. Years ago, Grace had a little brother named Daniel. He too had lost his hearing, and she lost him because no one could afford to save him. Since that day, Grace carried a promise deep inside her soul. If I ever meet another child like him, I won't look away. The first time she saw Ethan, he sat on the marble stairs, arranging toy cars in a perfect line, silent, careful, lonely. Every day she left small gifts, a paper bird, a golden-wrapped chocolate, a drawing. At first, he ignored them. Then one morning, the chocolate was gone. From that moment, a fragile friendship began to bloom. He started waving at her reflection in the window. He laughed silently when she dropped a cup. For the first time in years, someone saw him, really saw him, but not everyone approved. The butler warned her sharply. "Mr. Thompson doesn't like the staff getting too close." Grace lowered her eyes. "But he's happier," she whispered. "That's not your concern," the butler replied coldly. Yet that night, as the mansion slept, Grace couldn't. She sat by the kitchen window, whispering to herself, "I won't let another child suffer in silence." The next day, Ethan sat in the garden scratching his ear. Frowning in pain, Grace knelt beside him, signing gently, "Are you okay?" He shook his head. When she looked closer, she saw something glistening deep inside his ear, something moving. Her heart pounded. "Let's tell your father," she signed. But Ethan panicked, signing back rapidly. "No doctors." "They hurt me." Tears filled her eyes. He was terrified of hospitals, and that night, Grace made a choice that would change everything. As the mansion slept under the silver glow of the moon, Grace tiptoed into Ethan's room. The boy sat awake, clutching his ear in pain. She whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart." "I'll help you," hands trembling. She took a small silver pin from her pocket. the same one she used to fix her uniform. "Hold still," she said softly. The lamp's light revealed something dark and alive inside his ear. "Please, Lord," she whispered. "Guide me." She reached in slowly, carefully, and pulled. A small black mass slid out, wet and glistening. She froze. It was moving. Then Ethan gasped. His eyes widened, and he whispered his first word, "Grace." Her world stopped. "You spoke," she cried. The boy flinched as new sounds rushed in, ticking clocks. The wind, the hum of the lights. He covered his ears, overwhelmed, but he could hear. He could finally hear. Then the door burst open. The butler, his face white with shock. "What are you doing to him?" he shouted. Ethan cried out, his first loud scream. "No!" Caleb came running in. The scene froze. The maid, the boy, the strange thing in her hand. And then, Ethan whispered again, trembling, "Dad." Caleb froze in place. His breath caught. For 10 years, he'd dreamed of hearing that one word. Grace whispered, "He can hear, sir. He really can," but disbelief clouded Caleb's face. "Guards!" he shouted. "Take her away!" Grace cried out as they dragged her off, the boy screaming her name again and again. "Grace! Grace!" Hours later, at the hospital, Caleb's world flipped. Doctors confirmed it. Ethan's hearing had returned. They found a biological object lodged deep inside his ear. Something no scan had ever caught. Something that had been there for years. Then came the truth, buried in the medical reports. Caleb found words that shattered him. Maintain diagnosis for continued funding approval. They had kept his son sick for profit. He dropped the folder, his hands shaking. They had used his child's silence to fill their pockets. When Caleb returned to the room, Ethan smiled faintly. "Dad," he whispered again. "Where's Grace?" Caleb looked down, guilt flooding his heart. "She's not here, son." "Bring her," Ethan said softly. "She helped me." And for the first time, Caleb listened. He ordered her release. When Grace walked in, Ethan's face lit up. "Grace!" he cried, laughing. She knelt by his bed, tears falling. "You sound happy?" she said. "I am," he smiled. Caleb stood quietly, humbled. "You saw what none of the doctors did," he said softly, "because you cared enough to look." Grace replied, "I didn't do it for thanks. I just couldn't let him suffer." And in that moment, Caleb realized compassion had done what money never could. The next morning, Caleb called a press conference. Before cameras and microphones, he spoke from the heart. "For 10 years, my son lived in silence. The world's best doctors failed him. But a maid gave him back his hearing, and tonight I learned that my son's pain was turned into profit. That's not medicine, that's cruelty. From today, that ends." The room went still. "I am creating a foundation. Free treatment for every deaf child, no matter their wealth. And the first person leading it is Grace." Applause filled the room. Grace stood frozen in disbelief, tears streaming down her face. Caleb smiled. "She taught me that the greatest miracle is not healing, it's listening." Weeks later, the mansion no longer echoed with silence. Ethan laughed, spoke, and played through the halls. Grace was no longer a maid, she was family. Every night, they sat together in the garden, Caleb reading, Ethan learning new words, Grace teaching him how to say them with love, and for the first time, the sound of laughter filled the house that once worshipped silence. Dear viewers, sometimes silence doesn't come from our ears. It comes from our hearts. Mr. Caleb had all the money in the world. Yet it took a maid with nothing but kindness to open not just his son's ears, but his soul. Grace didn't heal through science or magic. She healed with love, with attention, with a heart that refused to ignore pain. She didn't just make a boy hear. She taught a father how to listen, and that is the greatest miracle of all. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your words might inspire someone else to listen with their heart.